Welcome to episode 0 of NPC Contact. This is a new weekly podcast dedicated to anything and everything old school RuneScape related, which I'll be hosting with the co-owner of this channel, Dane, and every week we're going to be joined by our mutual friend, Grant. This is the first piece of content that will be on the channel, so for everybody that's listening, on behalf of myself and Dane, we'd like to welcome you to Hex Hunters. Hopefully you guys stick around to see some of the cool stuff that we've got planned in the future. The typical format for the podcasts will be, we're going to be discussing the poll or the blog for the first sort of 15 minutes for that week. Then I will be choosing a topic, leaving the lads having to think of organic thoughts on the spot for 45 minutes. So they're not going to know what we're going to talk about in advance, but I will. We're aiming for these podcasts to be about an hour in length. But obviously, if we're really enjoying the chat at the time and we want to go a bit longer, then we will do. If it's a bit of a light week, then, you know, we'll cut it down. So, with all that bullshit over and done with, Dane, buddy, anything you want to add to that, or should we just get cracking?
Yes, I also might like to add that this will most likely cover both old school and maybe a little bit of RS3 as well, as we do actually both play RS3 and old school.
Whoa, you're damaging my cred here.
It is.
Holy shit.
Old school itself. But other than that, I don't think there's much else to add as anything.
Yeah, there's a lot to be learned from both games.
Both games do a lot of things bad and a lot of things good, so...
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, you know, people wouldn't be playing both, right? Anyway, correct. So I just want to throw this out to everybody here. I'll start with Grant, because you haven't said anything yet. But welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Hi.
So I want to know from both of you, what is your RSN? And if you could describe your relationship with old school in one word, what would that one word be? And that is as open as you want it to be. So whether you want to say like addicted, or you know what you do on the, like whatever you think about in that one word, what would it be?
Well, my RSN's Grant with 2 N's because one was taken. And
so imaginative.
I know, right? And I think when it comes to old school, and one word that would describe it, it honestly would be addiction. I mean, I love the game, don't get me wrong. Yeah. So I'm not playing it out of like that I have to, but
I think there's an element of that with all of us.
Yeah, for sure. I think, you know, for all of us, it's like we love it, but it's something that we've done for so long, it almost becomes routine in a way.
Yeah. I mean, it's that old meme, right? You never quit.
You never quit.
You just take a break. Yeah, what about you, Dane?
Well, my RSN is special with a Z. When did I start playing?
I mean, this is
2006, where I made my first account, and then it got banned, which is hilarious.
What did you get banned for? I can't remember. Macroing major.
I was asking someone to like how to make a bot, basically. That's pretty funny. So that got banned after like 3 months, and I was level 54. Never forget. I had full mistake and thought it was the dog's bollocks.
You were.
So that got banned, and then I made this account that I'm still playing on today, both old school and RS3. So this account's like 14 years old.
So you don't have the veteran cape?
I do not.
No. That's unfortunate for you.
Leading on from that, the fact that I don't have the veteran cape, my one word to describe my RS career is tragic. So,
that is not the word that I would have picked for you.
Pretty sure that sums it up quite well. So,
just to quickly jump in, I'm aware I haven't introduced myself yet. My name's Will. My RSN is Noxai. I started playing 2003. Was when I made my first account. It was, I think, just after the Scythe came out. Was that 2004, 2003? I missed
Halloween, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I missed that that holiday, and I joined after that. So I'm quite old.
So going back to that though, I just sound like the most boring guy here. Like, my name's Spezzo, my name's Grant.
Yeah, hi, I'm Grant.
But I didn't really mention when I started. I started in 2007. I think a lot of us did sort of around that time period.
So this is like, old school is like based on when you started.
Pretty
playing.
much, yeah. I think it was sort of just before Summoning came out, which is like, so that was early 2008. And for me, it was just like, I played RS all the way from 2007, quit when I went to school, maybe like 2010, came back to it 2011, played a little bit of RS3 up to like sort of 2016, but for the most part, old school has been my my main game.
I know that, I mean, Dane and I have we played through the evolution of combat. We very rarely quit the game. I know that there was a period of time where both of us have. We either stopped playing for a year or a couple of years or a few months, whatever it might have been. But we've been there through every single update. For me, I stopped playing when I went off to university for the first time, just because I wanted to focus on, funnily enough, my degree.
Weirdly enough, yeah.
But yeah, we always end up coming back, don't we? It's like a boomerang.
Always. Yeah, I mean, I just love, as of right now, like, the diversity between the two games, because, people will talk crap about both of them, whether you like it or not, but there's so much to offer with both. And as someone who's played both, like, I quit RS3 in 2016. I maxed and I got bored and I quit. And I play old school primarily now, but I mean, I don't regret that period of time,
So I know that Grant, you obviously only play old school at this point.
Yeah.
Dane and I primarily play old school. Me more so, I would say. I know that you've been getting into RS3 a bit more recently. This podcast is more aimed at old school in general, but we do want to talk about topics that span both games. And so whether it's something like we want to talk about PVM in general or the longevity of the game, I think it would be stupid to not mention elements from RS3. And obviously we can quickly have a chat about stuff like Enrage or whatever it might be.
Yeah, sure.
But I want to save like a PVM topic for like a full episode at some point down the road.
Totally.
So along the lines then of the two different games, did you guys ever get into any other MMOs?
I briefly had a stint with WoW, and this was like recently. Like when WoW Classic came out, I enjoyed it. When I say a stint, it was long. It was maybe about a month. I enjoyed it to an extent, but I remember just one day I was playing it and I just burnt instantly. Like just never want to play it again. I don't know why.
It's interesting because we talk about the difference between RS3 and old school, and how the different communities have different views on each other. I mean, it's the same with Classic and Retail WoW. I mean, I played Retail WoW when Battle for Azeroth came out, so last year or the year before, whenever that was. So I played that expansion, really enjoyed it. And Grant, we have a friend who is incredibly addicted to World of Warcraft.
I think I know who you're on about.
Yeah.
When you say incredibly addicted, like it's a lot.
Yeah, it's alarmingly so. And he tells us about the fact that like the Classic community, and the word that I was thinking of earlier when I thought Dane was going to describe his old school experience or his RS experience is elitist.
Yeah.
Because there is that divide between people that play what is considered the harder game in Classic, as opposed to Retail. Like Retail seems a bit more noob friendly and blah blah blah. And I feel like we have a similar sort of
identical. That's similar. It's the same thing, 100%.
Which is weird because, I mean, again, we're going to have this conversation when we talk about RS3 and old school PVM. One isn't necessarily harder than the other. They test different skills.
There's so many different aspects of both games that test someone's like difficulty or test the difficulty. Like it's so hard to compare some, especially with WoW Classic and Retail WoW, is it? You can compare them more purely based on they have the exact same combat system or very similar combat system. But with old school and RS3, the skill gaps are just so different. You can't compare them and say, well, this is harder than this, because you just can't.
I mean, Dane, you're obviously someone that you have a lot more experience in PVM on RS3 than me.
And me. You
are, I mean, the bomb tank of legend, right?
Sign me. Sign my seismic.
Let it go.
Never. I will never let that go. So when you think about the differences between the two, and like I said, we go over this briefly. I'll change the topic in a minute. But do you think that one is inherently harder than the other? Purely from like a difficulty perspective, like the skill that you need, is one harder than the other?
No, not necessarily. I think it reflects just like any sport or game does. It reflects a wider society. Unfortunately, when we were younger, say 5 to 6 years ago, it wasn't just, not everyone cared about being absolutely like the best PVMer or the best skiller, so it's like, well, now everyone just has to be the most efficient skiller, the most efficient PVMer.
I hate that word.
It's not. there's just nothing else to it, and I think that's where both games are quite similar. So what people are actually arguing about isn't the problem itself, because both games require different sort of skill sets, but both skill sets are at quite a high level if you want to be the best at that game, which is fairly standard for most games nowadays.
I should just point out that I know that you mentioned it earlier, Grant. You are maxed on RS3.
Yes.
I'm maxed on RS3. Dane, you very recently lost your comp, right? Because obviously we don't play anymore. You're getting it back now.
I say recently. It was like probably 2 years ago. I don't know. I've just not played it that much.
Yeah. What you have? How much total XP on RS3? Like
2.7 bill.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I never got to that point. But we're all accomplished players on RS3, I would say. Grant, you are the only one out of the three of us that is maxed on old school.
Hello. Yes.
Big flex.
So far.
Yeah.
So far.
I'm catching up. I'm 2.2k at the moment. So fingers crossed I'll be done this year. Dane is 2,150-ish. So you're not too far behind. But obviously, you know, you've got IRL things. You can't just sit here and play the game. So we are experienced players. We aren't just a bunch of idiots that are trying to talk about a game that we barely
get
know.
Off Tutorial Island yesterday, lad.
So hopefully that lends us a bit more credence to our, I don't know, qualifications or whatever. Although I should just slide in here, I'm the only one that has an Infernal Cape out of the three of us.
It didn't ask, really.
So
it really wasn't agreed by anyone. Did you ask, Dane?
He did buy it. So.
Whoa.
Don't tarnish my reputation.
I want to see that bank statement.
Actually, funnily enough, we're going to be coming onto this topic a bit later when we record episode 1 of the podcast. So I'll just rein things back in, as is my job as somehow the appointed host of this. I do want to ask you both one question. It's the same question that JMods get asked when a new JMod joins the team. And that is, what is one unpolled change that you would make to old school RuneScape?
Oh no.
And this is why I love the fact that I haven't told you anything about the questions that I'll be asking or the topics that we're going to cover, because I want to...
To me, it's fairly simple. But
you want to go first, or shall I?
I'll let Will finish first and let him say what he wants.
Oh, okay.
Well, we are... I would say arguably we are primarily PVMers on this game. As much as we do enjoy going for skill goals and eventually, you know, pet hunting and blah blah blah, like we primarily play the game for PVMing. And I think there's one major issue in terms of gear specifically in PVM. And Grant, I know that I'm probably stealing your answer here, but I think for me, I would remove the blowpipe from the game.
Whoa.
Yeah.
No, that's not allowed.
It's exactly what I was going to say. Carry on, though.
Grant and I had a chat a couple of days ago, or was it last night? I can't remember.
It was a couple of days ago, yeah.
About if you read the item description of a twisted bow, and you read the item description of a blowpipe, and you knew that one of them was worth 1 bill, you would not think that it's the twisted bow.
100% not. No way.
Like
You've got an item.
You just wouldn't.
That shoots every 2 ticks, and it can do up to 30 damage every 2 ticks with spec.
The fact that a blowpipe in max range with bronze darts is higher DPS at Bandos than max melee
with a scythe and an infernal, it's crazy.
Is disgusting. Like, as someone that I'm gonna sound like very old man Jenkins here, but I sit on my like rocking chair thinking back in my day. But back in my day, like Dane and I would sit at Bandos in max melee for hours and hours and hours, and that is the nostalgia that I wanted to come back to old school for. Like I wanted to go to God War's dungeon, and obviously I can still do that if I wanted to. If we decided let's go to Bandos and one of us is tanking and the other one is...
But it's not the same though, because you were doing it back then because it was the best method.
Yeah, and it comes back to that
now,
word,
it's not as fun.
The word efficiency. Like, I could do that, but it's just not worth it.
No.
If I'm trying to make money, if I'm trying to max, if I'm trying to get a pet, if I'm trying to complete the collection log, for God's sake, like, it's not worth it for me to sit there and use a whip and just like hit the bastard. Or I guess it would be rapier these days. Obviously, when we played, dungeoneering was out, and there were chaotics in the game. So I guess the Grazi Rapier is sort of the equivalent.
Not as good though, but yeah.
For me, the fact that it just limits so much design space having the blowpipe in the game. Like you can't make new range items because what's the point? I can just pay
Design
5 mil for a
every
blowpipe.
PVM
Yeah.
encounter around.
I understand where you're both coming from, and I do agree to an extent. But the way now that it's in the game, I think the only way to combat this in a sensible way, other than just removing it, which I do not think is ever going to happen anyway. Obviously,
No, it won't.
I think the way to combat that is just to make it a whole lot more expensive to use. Personally.
Yeah, like double the rate of scales or something.
Yeah,
that you
double
use.
rate the scales, make darts, like for example, like smithing darts, like you only make 5 instead of 10 or whatever it is. You know, just stuff like that, basically.
It's certainly interesting, and I think that if you nuke a lot of the Zulrah bots as well, that would mean less of them coming into the game, increase the price. I don't necessarily have an issue with the item existing. I just think that in its current state, it's too.
It's the first thing you buy. It's the first thing you buy. You're level 85. You've made your first 5 mil. Your first thing you buy is a blowpipe. That shouldn't be a thing.
My brother recently came back to playing old school. He doesn't want to take any loans from us or anything, or like borrow my bow or whatever it might be. He made 5 mil doing barrows with a trident and immediately bought a blowpipe, and he's now off, beating everything in the game because that's just how good the item is. And I don't think that's healthy.
No, I don't think it is either. I agree. Kind of off topic though, one thing, sorry Dane to interrupt, but one thing, I'm going to cheat a little bit before Dane explains kind of hinting. The one other thing I am cheating, but I need to say it, is I really, really wanted sailing. I really wanted it. It didn't pass a poll. It was the second new skill that didn't pass a poll, and I really wanted it. I'll kind of let you guys air your argument, but I really wanted to, just before this whole thing went past, I really wanted to mention that just because I love that skill.
I don't understand how it would help anything.
It wouldn't, but it was cool, and I really wanted it. Like, I don't know.
It's just an excuse to play sea shanty on repeat, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah, maybe. But I like that. Out of all the skills I think they pulled, it was probably the best. I mean, warding's, we don't talk about warding, but yeah, I don't know. Anyway, Dane, you go. My bad.
Well, seeing as how you cheated, my 2 that I would suggest if I was allowed to pick 2 would be.
You're not. You're allowed to pick one.
Dungeoneering.
Oh,
or 120 capes.
My heart.
Now, Dungeoneering is just probably my favourite skill.
You don't even need to explain it.
Yeah, I don't need to explain it. Everyone should like it.
DG's, yeah, it's
an amazing skill.
We used to make our money back in the day from selling floors because.
Oh, so did I. There you go.
And like this is back in the day when Dungeoneering required a Kia. Like I know that a lot of people that might hear that will think like, what the hell's a Kia? But like you used to have to decide who was picking up all of the keys. They didn't go into some sort of shared inventory that you could just open any door with. Like it took a lot of effort to map out routes in dungeons, and
that's why I feel like if it was released on old school now, it'd have the old combat system. Obviously, I don't know how they do like the rewards, like the CLS and rapier, etc. But I'd imagine that they would do them. Stuff like the Farseer shield, and even.
What do you think they do?
I don't understand. I don't know how they do them necessarily, but I think they would. And all the old school DG techniques would now be relevant again. And I was just thinking,
as if it was released.
Yeah, it would be fun, but again, it also goes back to like how.
Can you remember like
society? It's just like everyone wants to be the best, so. I think people would enjoy it.
I love skill release days. It's the best. It just reminds me so much of back in the day when new stuff comes out.
And this is why I would pick the word elitist for Dane, because you aren't necessarily elitist, but you want there to be elements of the game where people that are extremely talented at them can shine.
Of course.
Well, I think there's 2 types of elitism though.
As much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Because I think all 3 of us are elitists. I just don't think we're the type of elitist that's going to shy someone away.
Yeah,
I feel like we are, depending on what mood we're in, basically.
yeah, true.
Yeah, well, not everybody can be asked to bring a learner along to, chambers or whatever.
Of course.
But, I think you're right. It would be really nice to see Dungeoneering back in the game.
It would. But then the other one, which is
120 capes,
is I understand why, because it will just fuck the economy for any sort of new player. And if the game's going to survive long term, then you need new players, obviously. But in terms of just overall RS3 updates, and I've played for 14 years, 15 years, that they are possibly my favourite one, apart from Virago. So, and obviously that's not ever going to get brought into old school. So
there's one other topic that does spring to mind when we talk about capes. And I know that you both immediately thought of it when I said that word, and it is something that we're not going to talk about too much today because we're going to talk about it in another podcast because it deserves more time.
It does, but it's a great idea. I'm putting it out there.
Yeah, but the comp cape is something that is.
Oh, that's what you were talking about.
No. Sorry. I mean the blue cape with the dye and the. No.
Yeah.
But yeah, comp cape is for me up there as well. That would probably be my second choice.
I would agree with that as well. However, like I would say with the skill capes, they would have to be the same as what they are in RS3 with like the particle effects.
For sure.
Yeah.
So,
definitely.
and I don't know how that would be done in old school. And if they can't do it how they are in RS3, then I just don't want them at all because they just look rubbish if they did it.
For me,
differently.
Colors don't bother me too much, as I think they kind of got around that in old school with the variants, but the particles for me are like, that's comp cape right there.
Yeah.
Huge.
I guess if I was being less negative about removing something from the game, if I had to add one thing to the game, it would be Nex.
Yeah, 100%.
I would add Nex.
Topic. We're not getting into that today.
I would add Nex.
No, that is a whole episode right there to Nex. But yes, I do.
I'd add the armors. Fuck it. I wouldn't give him the HP boost.
Fucking send it.
But
no, I wouldn't either. But that's all for the next.
I want to sit there with my assembler max cape, my T-bow, and full Pernix in the GE. I just want to sit there and look at it. It'd be beautiful. Gorgeous. Okay, so we'll call it a day there talking about RS. The other angle that I want to talk to you guys about is content creation. Sure. My first question to both of you is, why did you decide to get into content creation, and what is the end goal for you?
Money.
Bitches. Fame.
I'm kidding.
Power.
No, not at all. I think this is going to sound super cringy, but like it just is. Like, everyone has one of those role models that they look up to that they want to be like, right? So for me, it was Boaty was one that I just loved because he was just someone that, I don't know, he was like the OG, right? He was like the first person to properly get big off, like, well, I stream, right? But like off stream, he did YouTube too, but streaming was his like, I mean, I think streaming is now his full title. He doesn't really do YouTube anymore. So I kind of wanted to just kind of emulate him. But, and also just kind of being like somewhat of a prominent figure in the community, not for money or even fame. It's just for like,
you want to make sure the game is being looked after. Yeah. And obviously everybody wants their own opinion heard, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that there are some people that are, I mean, like we hear a lot of poll feedback and stuff about vocal minorities, and you know, we can even look at the Slayer boss, the boss Slayer that got shelved. I know a lot of people, including myself, that would be perfectly happy with that in the game, and obviously that is including having thought about the consequences of adding it. All of these different sort of factors. I find it really interesting that your mind goes to Boaty. Dane, when you think about RuneScape videos in terms of ones that have inspired both you and I, who is it that comes to mind for you?
It would have to be RuneShark.
Yeah, for me it's RuneShark. Any day of the winter. Like there are a lot of fantastic content creators out here these days.
Okay.
But they, for me, inspired me to take the game a bit more seriously, and not in a way that's like
sweaty efficient.
Yeah, but I paid attention to their guides, and I thought, okay, well, they think after their testing that the chaotic rapier is better here than the CLS, so I'll bring my rapier here, and I'll, you know, it just made me start thinking about the game like at that next sort of level. I think that's definitely something that shaped me into the player that I am today.
I think
a lot of players.
The reason you've picked RuneShark and the reason I wouldn't pick RuneShark is because I think you guys are a bit of a double act. And they were the the epitome of the rune. They were the original.
He is my sidekick.
Am I Simon or am I James?
Oh, so we don't. Yeah. All I know is I'm born for PVM, mate. And for me, that's why I picked Bowie, just because he was on his own. And I didn't really have any RS pals. That sounds a bit sad, but I didn't really have any RS pals that would
get
do
off the
that,
podcast. Fuck off.
You know what I mean? So yeah, but that's probably why I picked Boomy Boo.
I think for me, it's obviously RuneScape, no matter what. Getting into content in terms of like, for example, this, like for me, it's just fun. It's just something to look back on in, whether it be next week or 2 years, or 5 years time, whatever it may be. It's something to have.
There is a hidden channel out there in the ether of YouTube from.
We do not discuss this.
I want to say from like 2011, 2012, something like that.
I don't know about this.
Do you remember recording the voiceover for the intro?
Yes, I'm pretty sure I still have it somewhere.
So Dane and I made a channel years ago, sort of inspired by RuneShark at the time. I would have been like 14, Dane would have been 14, something like that.
Tanzun Vertoso before they came to be.
Yeah, exactly. We're the original.
We're like their sisters, basically.
Nah, they were off RuneShark, mate.
So there is a YouTube channel out there with one video on it, which is an introduction to our channel, and it was myself, Dane, and a friend that we had at the time.
Sounds awfully familiar.
Yeah, exactly. We just did it for fun, we wanted to. We really romanticized the idea of like a from scratch series or whatever it might be at the time. And yeah, that's what got us into it. I don't know if there's anything more specific that you wanted to like accomplish, Dane, but I know for me, like I agree with you, it's more something to listen to in a couple of years and think like, oh yeah, we had that chat about that issue at the time.
Well, it's just like I said, I do agree with that as well. Like if for now it's just a bit of fun, something to work on with friends, something to just enjoy doing, and then obviously, like I say, in X amount of time, it's something to watch back and think, wow, I've had so much fun just making that video or just being a part of that game. But if it turns into something a bit more serious, then everyone's a winner. I don't want to. But if that doesn't happen, then I'm not bothered about it personally.
I mean, I'm 25 in like next week, 2 weeks, something like that. I'm not gonna dox your ages, but you guys, well, Dane specifically, you are a similar age than me. Grant, you're a little bit younger than us. Little baby Grant.
17. No.
We sort of played in different eras, I guess. So there's a big part of the reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast specifically, because you're going to have a different opinion to myself and Dane. We are like the boomers of this game.
The boomers.
We've been playing non-stop for years.
I have not been called that ever in my life.
Well, embrace it, buddy.
I now feel a change.
You've got a mortgage.
Jesus Christ.
Oh dear.
I think the one thing you're on about though, I think you were kind of referencing podcasts there about going back and listening to old conversations and what you were thinking. I think for me, especially when I started streaming as well, like I stream like main content, right? Like main like PVM stuff content, and in a world right now where the old school section is pretty much just Iron Man's game. I made content that I wanted to watch.
I was literally just about to ask. It's the next question on my list.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
Well, I mean, let's just jump into it.
Yeah. So I made content that I wanted to watch, and in something like a podcast, like this is something that I would want to listen to.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I wanted to be so involved with it. Really.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway,
I like voicing my opinions on topics in a healthy and non-threatening way.
Yeah.
I don't want to shout at someone for having a different opinion than me, but I'm someone that enjoys having the conversation. I want to know why you think that. I want to know, have you considered this angle, whatever it might be. So a podcast for me is just, it's a perfect fit. But to my question, what do you guys think about the current state of old school content creation? Like you said, there is a lot of Iron Man progress video. I just think 412.
It's boring. And you know what? I understand why a lot of people, because I'm a bit, I'm a main. That's like my thing. I pet hunt. That's like my main like go-to thing when it comes to.
You've never touched Iron Man, have you?
Briefly, but never really given it a proper go. No. And I don't I see why people love it, right? And I do, and and to this day, there's still a lot of Iron Man series that I do watch. Like I've been watching Iron Mammal like literally since episode 1, right? But the thing is, as it gets to the point, is there's so many different series. As you get to the point where it's like, can I have some of it?
It's a game that has so much in it, and we only really see a certain percentage of that game represented. I mean,
which is why I think Swampletics does so well.
Yeah.
It's because he's
Snowflake accounts in general are just really interesting. I'm someone
Apart
that
from
years and years and years ago, I started making a One Defense Iron Man series on my own, just before any of this sort of crazy, I can only right click Iron Man sort of crap came along.
One tile only Edgeville.
Yeah. Because it was something that I wanted to see done. And I gave up on that series a while ago because I started, university and stuff at the time. So I shelved that, and when I came back to it, I just lost the drive to keep doing it. And obviously that niche has been filled by loads of different people at this point. But I think there is something to be said for making content that you would like to see.
Yeah, 100%. You don't enjoy it if you don't.
Exactly.
Because it's very cliche. You hear a lot about YouTubers like burning out and stuff, and they're like, I'm just not enjoying it anymore, guy. But it's so, you can't fake.
Yeah, I mean,
being interested. You just can't.
You and I have had the conversation so many times about starting a podcast, because we will sit on Discord and we will have these chats.
Oh yeah, we'll chat shit for hours.
We'll be like, okay, we're now at a point where we don't have the chats because we want to save it.
All this stuff.
Yeah, we want to save it for recording it so that we can, have it for, years down the line if we want to go and rewatch the chat we had about an issue.
Totally.
So this is not new to us. It's new to us in the sense that we're now recording it, and I'm taking on the role of someone that's like asking questions rather than like we're just having a chat.
The mod Sween to my mod Kieran.
Yeah, exactly. Wait, don't say I'm mod Sween. What the hell?
Yeah, that's bad.
Wait.
Oh, how's that bad? He's hench, mate.
I love mod Sween, but I'm good at the game,
Mod Wolf.
Give Will the power of a mod.
The authoritarian
I think
inside
in
me.
terms of the Iron Man scene, I understand why people enjoy playing it, and I could just about understand why people enjoy watching it on a live stream. Granted, if it's like a hardcore at top, yeah, I completely understand why that would be good to watch. But in terms of just doing it myself, the amount of time it takes to do just basic things, I just do not have the patience to do that, and or even have the time to do that anyway.
Yeah.
So, to me, it's not for me. But if it supports the game, I'm not got a problem with it whatsoever.
And we.
Oh yeah, me too.
We've had the idea of doing like a group Iron Man thing for a while, even before the announcement of Group Iron Man came out, because obviously our history with content creation is watching RuneShark, and they're obviously their most famous series of all time, the Godsword set from scratch. Even before that, I don't know that many people know this, but they did Corporal Beast from scratch.
Did they?
Which was like a 6-episode series where Born for PVM, and James from RuneShark went and killed Corp from scratch. And it was something that probably took them like, a day or two to make. But I remember watching every single video and being like, oh my God, like Dane and I have to do this. Like we have to go and do something from scratch. Like just, and I know that you've always had an attachment to your items and stuff. So you're less eager to do it than I am. But,
Of course.
But I think Group Iron Man will be a good middle ground for us, because I can still do the boring stuff while you can hop on and.
Group Iron Man would be good in terms of you don't have to just grind something, and if you get stuck on it, you're not just doing that for 2 weeks, because someone else could get lucky doing it, and then you're done. So that is more like a normal MMO to me. You just obviously play it within a much.
Yeah, you always used to say, why would you play an MMO on single player? I remember you very clearly saying that to me. And obviously some people don't have friends to go and play old school with or whatever, so I guess it kind of makes sense. But the whole point of playing an MMO is to, mix with the community and talk to people and make friends. And I mean, I met you, woodcutting in World 69 in 2004. Well, no, 2007.
I wish I had a love story like that.
Well, I mean, my brother groomed you. So
I don't regret it though.
There's that.
Oh yeah, your brother.
Right. Okay. We've reached 35 minutes already on this podcast, so I want to ask one question to the both of you before we wrap things up.
Sure.
And that is, now that you're in the YouTube content creation scene, what is one video series that you would start making if you had no limitations, whether that be
had it set up in my head already, mate.
whether it be time, GP, accounts, whatever it might be, what is your dream series that you'd like to make?
I would love to do like a completionist series, like not directly like the guides for us all, like let's complete the collection log, but like I just love that kind of. I love progression videos, like really basic stuff, nothing mental like a Snowflake Iron Man, but like something like, for example, I like Road to All Pets would be fun for me. I would try to figure out a way that I could sort of make it more interesting rather than just like, here's my task from Duradel, we got
like
hellhounds, okay. Yeah, like something a bit more like that where it's got a bit more kind of substance to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd love to do that for sure, definitely.
Right, Dane. Ideal video series.
Yeah, I don't really know, to be honest with you. I'm just thinking.
Okay, well I'll go with mine. Give you a bit of time. So for a while now, Dane and I have been wanting a very particular item on old school RuneScape. Something that is
I know what it's going to say.
Blue. It's something that has eluded us. Like I've had every other like a high value item, but I've never had this item. So I think my dream series would be Road to Ellie's from scratch.
As in Elysians or Ellie?
As in multiple Ellies.
Oh dear.
As in you get one and I get one, so that we don't have to share one. And the reason that I think about that is it satisfies my urge to do a from scratch series like what RuneShark did, and it doesn't mean that I have to make a new account in order to do it, as much as I love my old scape, as we all know. It would be nice to do something when I'm maxed where I can just focus on doing like a childhood goal that I've had, because the Ellie is my favorite item. It has been my favorite item in the game since they were released.
Hashtag divine gang.
Yeah, Dane is a divine.
Me too.
But for me, I just love the blue, to the point where it's now going to be inked on my body for the rest of my life.
You get an Ellie.
Getting the sigil done. Don't flame me.
That is insane. That's not
so yeah, like I want one for myself, because I've never had one on old school. Like I said, I've had a T-bow, I've had a scythe, I've had all these cool things, but I've never had an Ellie. So for me, Ellie from scratch with Dane, where we end up with 2 Ellies.
When you say from scratch, do you mean just doing co-op or just like making money?
No, just making money however we want to.
Whatever.
Yeah. Not Iron Manning it, just from scratch.
So we could still buy stuff or whatever if we make the money.
Yeah, I think so.
If you buy gear, yeah, okay. I think for me, based on that, the only boss. Well, I'd say that I've like obviously from RS3, I've not had a drop from like Solak yet, obviously because I've not done him or whatever. And RS3, like I've not had a drop from like Sire because I've not done Sire yet. But the boss that I've done and that I've never had a drop from in 14 years is Corporal Beast.
Yeah.
So I would like to get a sigil. I don't care what it is, as long as it's not a spectral.
Well, we could like incorporate that into the from scratch. We could do like we have to get one of them from the drop
as an actual drop. Yeah. I would like to do that. But
yeah, I agree. We've done far too many kills to not have had a drop.
I don't like to think how many kills I've done.
Yeah, it's 4 digits, and we've never had a sigil.
I feel like we're owed one basically, and I think it's achievable. It's not something that's going to take a stupid amount of time. Yeah. So I would have the patience to do it. The boss itself is quite enjoyable once you get into it. So that's my answer.
Perfect. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for today, guys. Hopefully, hopefully this has given you a bit more of an insight into us as players, us as people, what we're trying to achieve with this podcast. I know that it's more for us than for anybody else. But I would like to think that there are people out there that will get enjoyment out of listening to us talk, because I know
I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that it resonates with as well, that are just like us, that have played it for like over 10 years, they've played both games, that probably enjoy both games even now.
Yeah.
And that just have the same sort of lifestyle as us, basically.
Yeah, I mean, we love this game. I think that's fair to say that all 3 of us love this game. We want what's best for it in the long run, because I want to be playing this game for as long as I enjoy it. I don't want to see it run into the ground or, you know, ruined by people that think they know what's good for it, and turns out they're just acting out of self-interest or whatever it might be. So I think it's just a nice little platform for us to have a chat about issues that we are thinking about at the time, and sort of just consider the larger implications of a lot of this stuff. But anyway, I think we'll wrap it up there. Grant, have you got anything that you want to add on to the end? Plug yourself. Where can the people find you?
I do streams. If you want to check me out, you can find me at twitch.tv/Grant_RS, Grant with 2 N's.
And you're thinking about starting a YouTube channel as well, aren't you?
Yeah, that will be probably the same URL. It'll be Grant with 2 N's.
Yeah. So if you guys just look in the description, all of Grant's links will be there. Dane, anything that you want to add on to the end before we wrap things up?
No.
Okay, well, I'll speak on behalf of us then. If you guys have made it this far, then thank you very much. Yeah, hopefully you've found it enjoyable. Hopefully you've done 45 minutes of skilling, and we've helped pass the time a bit. For you guys, obviously this is the first episode of this podcast. If you have any sort of feedback, whatever, leave it down below. Welcome to the channel. I know I said that earlier, but this is obviously the first video that's going out, so thank you for clicking on this. If you do like the idea of listening to our podcast on a weekly basis, then feel free to subscribe and all of that jazz. Like we said, this is an us thing, but we'd love to have you along for the ride. So thank you all for tuning in, and that's it from us, and we'll see you next week.
See you later.